What if the loudest action in Hollywood wasn't the gunshot, but the instant the reel clicked and an inconvenient truth slipped between frames? Imagine a projection room where light trembles, and in that tremor you glimpse what the posters never promised. A mother chasing a mark she can't forgive, a dossier that stains the hand that opens it, a cop whose faith casts a longer shadow than his badge, a marksman framed by the flag he once saluted, an artificial soldier taught humanity's darkest lesson by human hands. If entertainment is the mask, then the edit bay is where the breath fogs beneath it. These are the 5 films that revealed what Hollywood tried to hide. The curtain of the Cold War fell, but the smoke never cleared. By the early 90s, America was fighting quieter wars not on battlefields, but inside boardrooms, laboratories, and newsrooms. The villains were harder to see. Sometimes they wore the same uniform as the heroes. Hollywood tried to move on, to sell the fantasy of peace through bigger guns and brighter explosions. But some filmmakers couldn't let go of what they'd seen. They used the language of action to speak about betrayal, guilt, and memory. Truths too complicated for headlines and too dangerous for the box office. In these films, revenge becomes confession. Justice becomes a cover story. Every bullet fired lights up a secret that was supposed to stay buried. And when the credits roll, what lingers isn't victory, it's the echo of something real that shouldn't have survived the cut. Let's rewind to the 5 films that crossed the line between entertainment and confession. Film 1. Blue Tiger 1904. It begins with a heartbeat and a gunshot, 2 sounds that shouldn't belong in the same scene. Blue Tiger, directed by Norberto Barba, follows a mother named Gina Hayes, played by Virginia Madsen, whose son is killed in a crossfire between rival assassins. One of them bears a tattoo, a red tiger. Grief becomes obsession, and her search for that mark takes her deep into the Japanese underworld hidden beneath Los Angeles neon. On the surface, it's a revenge thriller, a woman chasing the man who took her child. But beneath the violence lies a confession Hollywood rarely made, that vengeance is not justice, and the lines between predator and prey blur when grief takes control. The tiger tattoo becomes more than a symbol, it's a mirror, one that reflects both sides of revenge. The film was marketed as action, yet every scene feels like mourning. Even the fight choreography moves like ritual, each strike carrying guilt instead of glory. What was meant to thrill becomes unsettling, a study of how trauma consumes identity. In the end, Gina doesn't defeat evil. She only meets it, face to face, realizing the beast she hunted was already alive inside her. Blue Tiger wasn't about violence, it was about the violence we become when truth is too hard to live with. Film 2. Hidden Agenda 1990. Rain falls over Belfast, not as cleansing but as warning. In Hidden Agenda, director Ken Loach turns a political thriller into a quiet indictment of power. The film follows an American human rights lawyer, played by Frances McDormand, and a British investigator, portrayed by Brian Cox, who uncover evidence of a secret British-American operation designed to control Northern Ireland through covert assassinations and propaganda. On the surface, it's procedural documents, interrogations, the hunt for a missing tape, but under that calm, the story bleeds. Loach doesn't shoot action. He shoots absence, the spaces where truth has been erased. Every whisper, every off-camera silence feels heavier than gunfire. The enemy isn't a single man. It's the machinery of denial itself. Released during the uneasy truce of the Troubles, the film struck too close to home. Some critics dismissed it as fiction. Others called it dangerous. But Loach's lens never blinked. He filmed politics the way a surgeon handles a wound, with precision and pain. Hidden Agenda exposed something Hollywood avoided, that freedom stories can be propaganda too, and democracy has its own shadows. The title wasn't just about government secrets, it was a mirror for the audience. Because sometimes the hidden agenda isn't theirs, it's ours. The lies we agree to believe just to sleep at night. Film 3. The Glimmer Man 1996. It opens in candlelight, a killer's reflection glinting off the cross he wears. On paper, The Glimmer Man was pure mid-90 seconds action, Steven Seagal and Keenan Ivory Wayans as mismatched detectives hunting a serial murderer through rain-soaked Los Angeles. But behind the buddy cop formula, the film hides a quiet unease. Its violence isn't entertainment, it's penance. Seagal's character, Jack Cole, isn't just another cop. He's an ex-operative, haunted by the things he did in the name of faith and flag. The movie keeps returning to symbols of redemption, crosses, icons, Buddhist prayer beads, as if the story itself is asking for forgiveness. Each fight feels rehearsed like a ritual, an act of cleansing through pain. What audiences saw was Seagal's usual mix of action and mysticism. What they didn't see was the metaphor. America trying to wash the blood off its own hands. Released in 1996, during the rise of spiritual thrillers, the film was softened in editing scenes. Exploring Jack's guilt and religious conflict were cut, replaced by jokes and explosions. The result looked confused, but the fragments that remained still shimmered with unease. In one unedited script draft, Cole says, "We all hide behind something, a badge, a cross, a cause." That line never made it to the final cut. But it's the key to the film, a confession disguised as an action movie. The Glimmer Man wasn't about saving souls, it was about what happens when the light you follow blinds you first. Film 4. Shooter, 2007. Snow falls over the mountains of Wyoming as a single shot echoes precise, perfect, and meant to deceive. In Shooter, directed by Antoine Fuqua and based on Stephen Hunter's novel, Mark Wahlberg plays Bob Lee Swagger, a Marine sniper framed for a political assassination he didn't commit. It's a familiar premise, the lone soldier betrayed by the system he once served. But Shooter is more than a revenge story, it's a study in how patriotism becomes a weapon when aimed the wrong way. Swagger's world is sterile, digital, and quiet. A nation at peace that still needs enemies. The film uses the language of precision to expose chaos. Coordinates, ballistics, angles, all in perfect order, while morality unravels beneath. Behind every mission brief is a lie, and behind every salute, a contract. What Hollywood sold was a clean narrative of retribution. The hero clears his name, justice is restored. But the subtext tells a harsher truth. The real crime is not the shot fired, but the silence that follows. Fuqua's framing lingers on empty landscapes and eyes that no longer trust what they see. By the time Swagger takes revenge, there's no satisfaction, only symmetry. In the final moments, he destroys the proof, ensuring the conspiracy stays buried. The man who could see everything from a mile away chooses blindness. Shooter isn't about corruption, it's about complicity, and how every truth that threatens the system must be hidden in plain sight. Film 5. Project Shadowchaser, 1992. It starts with a spark steel against steel, then silence. Project Shadowchaser, directed by John Ayres, was released straight to video, buried beneath bigger studio hits. On the surface, it's science fiction. A cyborg terrorist, Frank Zagarino, hijacks a skyscraper and takes hostages, while a disgraced athlete turned convict is forced to stop him. But behind the cliches lies a haunting reflection of its era. A time when America was trying to build perfection and ended up duplicating its own darkness. The cyborg, code-named Romulus, isn't just a machine, he's a mirror. Programmed to protect, he learns to dominate. Trained to serve, he begins to question. And as his creator watches the destruction unfold, the film quietly asks, when we build something in our image, do we also build its capacity to rebel? Hidden in its low-budget frames are echoes of the post-Cold War psyche, the fear that technology, like ideology, will inherit our cruelty. Each explosion masks a deeper anxiety, that the human impulse for control always creates its opposite. Critics dismissed Project Shadowchaser as another die-hard clone, but its title tells the truth. We are all chasing shadows, the perfect soldier, the perfect system, the perfect lie. Romulus doesn't die. He shuts down, eyes open, as if waiting for the next order that never comes. In that final stillness, the film finds its revelation. The monster isn't the machine. It's the memory we programmed into it. Bonus fact: The Peacekeeper, 1000, 997. Sometimes the story that vanishes tells more than the one that survives. The Peacekeeper, directed by Frederick Forestier and starring Dolph Lundgren, was one of the last Cold War-era action films to openly question America's control over its own weapons. It told of a stolen nuclear briefcase and a soldier who must defy direct orders to prevent global catastrophe. It looked like just another action spectacle, but in its unedited version, it was a warning. Early drafts painted its hero not as a patriot, but as a man haunted by duty. Someone who realizes peacekeeping can become the most violent job in the world. Test audiences saw something too uncomfortable. A soldier doubting the flag he served. The studio intervened, trimming dialogue, brightening colors, replacing moral ambiguity with pyrotechnics. The final release became hollow, an explosion without a heartbeat. But the lost footage, whispered to still exist in a European print, hinted at something bolder. A soldier staring at a reflection of himself on the bomb's chrome surface, realizing he's both the threat and the protector. That image never made it to theaters, but its ghost lingers in every frame of what's left. Some films fail on screen, others were never even allowed to fail. When the lights fade and the reel slows, what remains isn't the action, it's the silence between edits. Each of these films carried a truth too fragile for its own time. That vengeance could mirror grief, that justice might disguise deceit, that faith could conceal guilt, that loyalty could destroy conscience, and that creation could outgrow control. Together, they trace a single pattern, the story of a culture terrified of its reflection. Hollywood called them thrillers, yet what they truly documented was confession. Beneath every explosion was hesitation. Beneath every victory, a quiet surrender. They weren't failures of entertainment, they were fragments of honesty smuggled into the machinery of illusion. The projector spins, the image flickers, and we see ourselves heroes and liars, editors of our own mythology. Because in cinema, as in life, the truth doesn't vanish when the cut ends. It waits in the dark, breathing beneath the sound of applause. In the end, the reel keeps turning, but the real story stays in the shadows. If the films we've revisited tonight felt more like memories than entertainment, perhaps that's because they were never meant to please, only to warn. Each one left behind a fragment of truth that the studios tried to silence. A confession buried in an edit. A heartbeat hidden under gunfire. Which story do you believe, the one that made it to the screen? Or the one that was cut away? Tell us which truth you think Hollywood feared the most. Subscribe for more stories they tried to erase. And remember, real secrets, where the truth was always in the edit.